My life must be forfeit.
And what good would that do? Will it wake my son? Will it change the truth of his folly and yours?
Welcome, everyone, to A Cast of Kings, a decoding TV podcast about the HBO original series House of the Dragon. I am one of your hosts, Jessie Earl, and it has been several years since I read Fire and Blood, the book upon which House of Dragon is based, and I am joined by the one, the only author of the unofficial guide to Game of Thrones and my fellow co-host.
I am Kim Renfro. And I have reread Fire and Blood many, many times, including several passages like half an hour ago before recording this podcast.
Like, just literally skimming through, like, what's changed? What's going on? Well, it's so good to see you. It's been so long since I've seen your face. So listeners, something fun. I got to officially meet Kim in person last night, and it was really wonderful. We have known each other for many years through this podcast, and we've lived in the same city for many years, but we have never had the chance to actually officially meet up. But I had a birthday party last night at a bar, and you came, and it was so exciting to have you. It was a really good time.
It was such a good time. It really is cool to experience one another in full 3D.
Yeah, it's like you're not a screen. You're not a screen anymore.
I know. And shout out to, our third co-host, David Chen, who is not with us at the moment, wasn't here last episode. I also have not experienced David Chen in full three dimension, and really hope to one day. Because it's so fun to connect over these things both online and IRL. And so, that was so cool. I'm really glad that we finally got to meet up. And it's like, I truly, really appreciate the way that this show continues to bring really awesome people together. Yeah. Including you and me.
Fun. Yeah, no, it was really fun. I think it's funny that the first time you see me is when I'm incredibly drunk because I had many drinks last night.
You were in your cups a little.
I was in my cups, It was great. I was doing my best Tyrion Lannister. There we go.
You were honestly handling the cups well.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was doing well, yeah.
You had an excellent birthday girl time.
I did. It was a wonderful time. So thank you for coming. But moving on, today we are going to be breaking down Season 3, Episode 2, titled Queen's Landing, written by showrunner Sarah Hess, who wrote Season 2's finale, amongst many others of this show, and was directed by Claire Kilner, with this being the 6th episode of the show that she's directed. And if you want to support shows like A Cast of Kings, please consider becoming a paid subscriber at decodingtv.com, where you can also get ad-free episodes of this show, as well as others. Also, if you want to give feedback on the podcast or have one of your comments possibly read on it for Kim and me to talk about, please consider sending it to acastofkings@gmail.com. And finally, subscribe to watch video versions of this podcast as well as the main Decoding TV podcast at youtube.com/@decodingtv, because Kim and I are too cool to not watch in 1080p. You gotta go see it. It's well worth the time.
We look great.
We do. We are phenomenal. And with all that said, we're going to jump right into our general spoiler-free thoughts of Season 3, Episode 2 of House of the Dragon right up front before we jump into our full in-depth recap and review in just a second. But starting us off, Kim, what did you think of this episode?
I already took a picture of this and texted it to you, but I literally wrote in my notebook, damn, I'm trying to show the camera for anyone who cares. I don't think it's gonna work, but that the build up to the end of this episode was so phenomenal that I really kind of left on a high. Upon rewatch, I was like, oh yes, there are parts of this episode I did not care for, and we'll get into that more specifically. And it's just an example of how the adaptation kind of continues to sometimes be a mixed bag for me. Some of the choices I am super, super stoked upon, or I think really land impactfully. And then there just seems to almost each episode be one scene or one thing where I'm left just kind of going, if not outright I wish I could unsee that from my eyeballs. But also
I think
that
I know
might
exactly
just be
the scene you and I are probably feeling the exact same way about.
yeah. And maybe that's just A Song of Ice and Fire universe at this point. But all that being said, every element of the show that I do really tend to love and enjoy, like I thought was turned up to 1,000 here. So super high highs. And yeah, I think I might have liked this episode even a little bit more than last week's. So we're on an interesting trajectory here.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with you. Again, there is one scene in this episode that I have a huge issue with that we'll talk about when we get into spoilers. But outside of that scene, this episode was fan-frickin-tastic. And I will say it's probably up there as one of my favorite episodes of this show, which is shocking because it doesn't not have action. It certainly does, but it is definitely not the most action-packed episode or like the big thing that I would have thought would be, having read the books, the thing that I would have considered to be my favorite episode. But this was just so good. The biggest thing for me here is just give Emma Darcy their Emmy already. They rocked this episode, as did Matt Smith and everyone, but in particularly Emma. They just were so great, and so many shades of Rhaenyra throughout this episode, top to bottom. And it was just a true tour de force with their character. So yeah, I again, one scene aside that we'll get into, really love this episode. It was really great. So, well, that's kind of our overview thoughts. Before we get into talking about the episode proper, I do want to address something that a lot of you listeners sent in many emails to us about last week, something that we missed, and I just think it'd be remiss if we didn't discuss it. But we got, just to pick someone who sent a really good email about it, we got a letter from, an email, I should say, from Emily Parisi, and apologies if I said your last name incorrectly, but Emily said, I just want to offer some additional insights to Rhaenyra's odd line about having the heart and soul of a king, or whatever, but the feeble body of a woman. This line is a paraphrase of a line by Queen Elizabeth I, delivered in her speech to the troops at Tilbury ahead of a battle with the Spanish Armada. The full quote is, I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and a King of England too, and think full scorn that Parma or Spain or any prince of Europe should dare to invade the borders of my realm, to which rather than any dishonor shall grow by me, I myself will take up arms. I myself will be your general judge and rewarder of every one of your virtues in the field. Elizabeth, in this quote, communicates strength and a willingness to fight with her men. Of course, she does not, but she doesn't have a dragon. The emphasis is on the battle as well as the protection of her realm against foreign adversaries who have the bigger navy and could sack England. England famously defeats the Spanish Armada despite being the underdogs. Elizabeth here claims the body politic of the King of England, which is a political metaphor where the polity is represented by a single ruling body. A metaphor is used to explain the monarch's divine right to rule. Emily goes on to say, while I love Rhaenyra, I agree that this reference in the show felt incredibly odd. Rhaenyra is more closely based on Empress Matilda. She spends a good deal of her life anticipating taking the throne, and she is not a virgin. Totally fine that she's not a virgin, but the metaphor Elizabeth uses does fall apart. As you say in the episode, so much of the show has to say about women's centers childbirth, so quoting the Virgin Queen was not an apt choice from my point of view. Westeros also doesn't seem to have the same concept of the body politic. And then Emily has many other really wonderful thoughts that I want to just spend the whole time reading, but it was a really great email. And for me, I totally agree. We got a lot of folks sending this into us. And for me, the context of the quote, I don't think it's necessary to know the context of the quote to be able to analyze the show, but I actually think knowing now the context of the quote, because I didn't know the history, actually makes it worse for me. because in the show, it's Rhaenyra in a room by herself, kind of giving this like weird gender essentialist, like, I know I have this weak body of a woman, and she's like having this sort of breakdown where everyone's considering her hysterical, quote unquote, the history of that word, hysterical, in the ways that women were sort of seen as mentally ill, or less mentally stable. And when you compare that to the real history, where Queen Elizabeth is like giving a speech to like rally her troops, I'm like, this just feels like a weird pull to sort of like invert it in a way that sort of like takes this kind of empowering women moment, is, complicated thoughts as I have on England and the imperialism that they did. and then give it to Rhaenyra in this sort of like moment of like when she's being heavily judged as a woman. I don't know. It felt weird to me. I'm curious, Kim, if you had any thoughts as well.
Yeah, I was taken aback a little bit by some of the responses we got that implied that like this should have been very obvious to me.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes me a dumb American to not have every quote from a British monarch like at the top of mind in the year 2026.
I feel like I'm good on not needing to know the quotes of the rich and powerful. Like I'm kind of, that's a vibe I'm feeling in 2026 right now.
Yeah, truly. And like honestly, I'm right there with you on that. Like learning the reference that was being made there did not improve my opinion on both the substance of that sentence as it stands, nor like the context of Rhaenyra delivering it in the show. Aside from the fact that there clearly is a through line into this episode this week, which we'll get into more as we go through some of these scenes, where I think I'm seeing, and again, freaking shout out Emma Darcy with their performance, because I feel like I'm seeing them embody this internal conflict through Rhaenyra. And like Rhaenyra's physicality changes in this episode through Emma Darcy's performance, in a way that very much makes me like that quote is, I think it's just going to now be stuck in my head for at least the remainder of this season as I watch Rhaenyra try to emit this certain level of like strength and grace under pressure while succumbing to like her physical body responses of the stress and emotional nature of what she is being tasked with doing, especially now that she is grieving yet another child. So yeah, just very interesting. Certainly folks always like, I love knowing when I've missed something. It's great to like know the references, and yeah, you know, I appreciate all the folks that made sure that we hadn't missed that.
Yes, and you definitely did. We all definitely did. But we appreciate especially the emails that were like very thoughtful and like Emily's here.
Yeah, I love getting an analysis of it, especially from people who are maybe a little bit more immersed in certain aspects of history that I don't know about.
And before we get into the episode, just to let you all know, we are going to be talking full spoilers for this episode from here on out, but we will not be spoiling anything from the book. That said, if you do want our thoughts on comparisons to the book, Kim and I are actually going to be doing a bonus episode that will be released in a few days from this one, if you're watching this right when this comes out, with a comparison to the book, as well as a small spoiler section in that bonus episode that will have our thoughts of what this show is setting up down the road from the book, and we'll kind of make that clear within that bonus episode. So be on the lookout for that. But with that said, let's go into the episode with Kim's wonderful breakdown. So first, the thing that we need to discuss is the opening credits, because there's a new intro song and new visuals that we got both last episode and this episode that we didn't talk about last week. So shout out to Dave who let us know we missed that. And I remember thinking about it when we were watching the episode and we didn't get to it. But yeah, the big thing with this is we have like a new drum beat and things like that. But Kim, can you take us to some of your thoughts on the visuals that we were seeing here in this tapestry?
Yeah, I did. Like the musical difference in the intro is subtle, but it's there once you pay very close attention, as of course David Chen does, because that's like certainly one of all of our shared appreciations of this show is the musical score by Ramin Djawadi. So I loved, like once I was really locked into that, you can tell that they've sort of done this thing where they're mixing the way that they approached using the main theme in A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I don't know if anyone's listening or watching this who hasn't seen A Night of the Seven Kingdoms yet, but you absolutely should. That was a really phenomenal one of these sequel successor shows that we're getting. And in that, they distinctly did not have a main title sequence or any type of opening credits. And it was kind of a surprise, spoiler, I guess, midway through the season, that when the heroic member of House Targaryen comes in to save the day, that main intro theme starts out. But they kind of like caught you up in the moment in the show with leading into it with the drum beat. And so I think that that's a little bit of echoes of what they're doing here with the slightly reworked theme. When it starts out, it doesn't start exactly the same as it did with the Game of Thrones intros. And then, yes, we have now added to our like the beautiful visual tapestry that they have for these opening credits. They have put in like the Battle of the Gullet now. So we have Admiral Lohar battling the sea snake. Those like the very like distinct costumes I love. Like you can like really you can see exactly how it was like lifted from last week's epic moment. And then of course Jace, R.I.P. with 3 arrows. Is now the tail end of this bloody civil war as laid out in the tapestry of the opening credits. And so we'll see. I'm assuming the sack of King's Landing, Queen's Landing.
Yeah.
The Queen's Landing will be in next week's, which will be really cool.
I did really like how the waves of the tapestry kind of became the waves of the
Battle of the Gullet.
Yeah. The Battle of the Gullet. It was very, very cool. I liked the visuals quite a lot there.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
It only took them 3 seasons, but they finally kind of figured out the introduction. Well, getting into the episode proper, speaking of the Battle of the Gullet, we begin the episode with the lingering fighting happening at the Battle of the Gullet. Soldiers are still dying in the sea and on the shore, while Alan searches for his father, Lord Corlys Velaryon, the Sea Snake. But Baela, Prince Jace's betrothed, managed to recover the dead heir's body. Kim, what did you think of this opening sequence?
Gosh, that opening shot, which basically picks up where we left off last episode nearly. I thought for a second it was Jace's body floating in the water, but I don't think it's meant to be. But like we start with this like, you know, from below water. Also, oh my God, side note, I saw someone mention between when we did our podcast last week and this week, I saw someone say that like that shot of Jace's body floating on the driftwood was like the point of view of Vermax.
Yeah. Oh God. That my heart, I almost feel like the actor who plays Jace performed the death really well, but like I feel worse for the dragons. When the dragons die, I'm like, I know my babies.
Vermax. So that was devastating. So anyways, that was in my mind as I again saw this shot. But just gorgeous, like the way that the lighting, the flashes of fire through the water, and then like you see, you know, like the silhouette of the dragon flying over. This was another time where I was like, oh, Claire Kilner, like straight away, I'm hooked. I think that like she is a phenomenal director and like really has a knack with this material for kind of like setting the emotional tone and building tension. So yeah, opening with us still kind of in this like quote unquote fog of war, literal fog of war a bit. Aftermath was beautiful. And also like, I think the beginning of what I saw throughout this whole episode of like a very clear investment in having a lot of actors on the set, a lot of stunt performers doing various like sword work, fight work, everyone's on fire. Like I think that HBO keeps breaking the record for how many stunt people they put on fire with every increasing successor show. And
yeah, I watched the house that the dragon built. I think it's like HBO sideshow that they do behind the scenes show for this before we recorded. And one of the things they talked about is they actually set off like a bomb near the actor who plays Aemond at the end of this episode, like one of the like, you know, explosion gags, as they also set a guy on fire. It's like one of the first times they've done that as close to one of their lead actors as they did in this episode. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
I like wild that that they keep finding ways to like somehow up the stakes of setting people on fire. But they do. Yeah. And I'm in awe. So way to go, team.
The show to do it for. Yeah,
truly. Yeah. And I think also worth pointing out in this like very opening shot, because I had a moment where I was like, wait a second, who are all these dragons again? And yes, we do see in the beginning of this episode that Hugh on Vermithor, Ulf on Silverwing, and then Adam on Seasmoke have all joined in the Battle of the Gullet. And so they're kind of like the cleanup crew who are burning up the remainder of the Triarchy ships, while Adam in particular on Seasmoke is looking for his father, Lord Corlys, who we will find later. So Alan's on the sea looking for Corlys, Adam's up in the air looking for Corlys, and Ulf and Hugh are kind of just running cleanup crew, and then they're going to head back to Dragonstone and await their chastisement, as we'll get to a little bit later.
Where in the world is Corlys Velaryon? Well, speaking of which, we get what is probably one of the standout scenes of this episode, but Bela flies Jace's body back to Dragonstone, where the Dragon Keepers ceremoniously carry his body to Rhaenyra's lower chambers. Rhaenyra realizes Jace is dead and lashes out accordingly. I'll start off with this one just to say it, because like that performance from Emma Darcy, as we've already said, was so good. One thing that I learned from listening to the podcast, the official House of the Dragon podcast before this, is that apparently they were going to have her like hit Jace's body in anger at like what he did, but obviously they couldn't do that with the actors being there. And I actually think what that led to is actually even better, because you just see this struggle that Emma plays of like wanting to hit him and not knowing and not wanting to, but wanting to, in this like struggle and anger and pain. And that moment too at the start of this where she says you realize she's talking to Jace.
Yeah. When she says, "What have you done?" And I thought she was talking to Bela and like Sir Laurent. No. And then you realize that she's addressing Jace's motionless body as if he's going to respond like he's her little kid, and she's like, "What did you do?" Yeah.
It's like, it's just wanting to like chastise her son, but then can't, and it's so visceral. And then that whole section where, you know, Sir Laurent touches her and then he forfeits his life after she's like, "How dare you touch me?" Deservedly so. That man like got off I'll just say, we'll talk about it later, but like
the
got
audacity.
Off lucky. Yeah, man. But I really loved this thing where she points out like, all of you are complicit in this. All of you don't, like, she doesn't say it explicitly, but like, all of you don't trust me. You're all like failed me in this moment. And it is performed so fantastically. And it also makes me weirdly feel really even better about Rhaenyra the character, because it's like, even in grief, like she's lashing out, but in a way that's like very reasonable. Like if I had just seen my kid die, I would be much, much more over the top. And I'm like, no, she's like, I think she's keeping it level for what she's
honestly. I think that she is entitled to be losing her shit a lot more than she is. And the fact that people then still are weaponizing her emotions against her is so frustrating to watch play out. And I like that this moment where she does finally kind of start like pushing on and hitting Jace's body in anger and saying like, "How could you do this?" And Sir Laurent comes up behind her, and again, like rewatching this, like everyone is playing off of each other so well. Like you can see in his face that he's also just like anguished over this, right? Like he's surely swimming in the guilt of having accepted Jace's frankly crackpot patriarchal idea, which you can argue led to Jace's own death. So in a way, Sir Laurent like literally failed both sides of the family he's sworn to protect in that moment. And I'm sure it's like, it's very difficult to watch someone grieve messily. It's very difficult to like just literally hold space for those feelings. And you see him like unable to take this anymore. And he thinks just removing Rhaenyra from her son's body is going to somehow help. Or I think he's saying like, leave it. You have to let him be. And it's like, it's just such a
weird chauvinism. Yeah.
Yes. It's like, it's such a stupid trope of like, you're not grieving right. Or like, you're like, it almost felt like he was like implying that she was like disrespecting his body in that moment, or that like, again, I think that his discomfort with the entire situation overtook his reason, which is like the logical side of his brain should be like, I don't touch my regent. I don't touch the queen in this case. Or if it was a king, I don't touch the king, particularly like after what you just did of locking her in her room and supervising that entire, like it was bananas. And I partially expected Rhaenyra to kill him on the spot herself. Me too. Yeah. Or order it done.
My partner Aaron said like that guard better be dead. This episode was before we started watching the episode.
Yeah. And then it's like, you know, he does the right thing. He realizes the gravity of his mistakes on several levels. Like he forfeits his own life. But yeah, I truly I feel like I can't speak enough about Emma Darcy in this episode, because like they took Rhaenyra through such an intense series of emotions so quickly. And the way that Rhaenyra moves from being like angry at the room to then as soon as Mysaria walks in the room, and like Emma Darcy and Sonoya Mizuno, who plays Mysaria, like lock eyes, and it like Emma Darcy's face just crumples. Like they go so quickly from this like, yes, like restrained, frustrated anger, grief into just straight up like emotional agony and like helplessness. Like their body kind of goes all loose in a way that it just like you watch them succumb to the pain of this moment. And then that's when she finally goes with more tenderness towards Jace's body and holds him. And that was when I finally started crying. I didn't cry last episode when Jace died. I felt things, but I had a feeling I would be impacted more watching a mother grieve her son, because I now have this visceral.
I was say, I wonder why.
I know. I now have this like visceral embodied experience of like truly living with the horror of that being a real possibility. Like the moment my son was out of me, I had to like accept the fact that he's incredibly vulnerable to the world, and like I'm going to do everything in my power to protect him both physically and emotionally, and square that with the fact that I can't. Like I literally can't do that all the time for the rest of his life. And gosh, yeah, I just thought that this episode was a really beautiful portrayal of a parent's like raw reaction to what is like the worst nightmare come true type of thing. And especially in Rhaenyra's case, she's had to relive this over and over and over again.
Numerous times. Yeah, it's rough. Yeah, I cannot speak more highly of that scene in particular. I think it's probably the best scene of the episode, and it is phenomenal. And if that is not in Emma Darcy's Emmy submission packet, I don't know what deserves an Emmy. I really don't.
Honestly.
Well, moving on, Rhaena, who made the misguided choice to fly a freshly caught wild dragon into battle last episode, returns to the Vale to seek asylum. We learn that nobody but Baela and the now dead Jace realized she was on the back of the rogue beast, and Lady Arryn dismisses Rhaena at first, but is convinced by the idea that she can now have a personal dragon guard sticking around in the Vale, even though she also tells Rhaena that she no longer wishes to see her after that point. So I particularly thought this was an interesting scene. We'll certainly have stuff to talk about this when it comes to book comparisons in the bonus episode. But I did really like Lady Arryn's calculation of like, get out of here. This is terrible for me. But then also sort of like, okay, I can kind of have my cake and eat it too here of I'll get a dragon protecting, and that's sort of what Rhaena offers. But then I will also have plausible deniability to Rhaenyra if, she comes knocking around being like, did you know about this? Or it's discovering she's like, I didn't know. The dragon is just hanging out. What do you want me to do with a dragon in the Vale? I can't stop that thing. You're the one that said you would protect me with a dragon. So it's kind of works out well for her in every shape and form. And Rhaena sort of gets like the barest like protection here.
Yeah.
And I really loved seeing Rhaena's desperation in this sequence. It was a really like harrowing, like, man, girl kind of brought it upon herself to a degree, but girl just wanted to feel useful and get a dragon. I understand that.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that Rhaena's predicament is understandable. I was kind of surprised to not see her going to Dragonstone. I wasn't expecting her to have like flown entirely away from the scenario and like effectively trying to hide now. I don't know why. I feel
like if she shows up, she might get blamed. I mean, I don't think she is to blame, but I think she worries that if she does go back, she's like, I've disobeyed Rhaenyra's orders directly.
Yeah.
By going off. And then also have been, could be considered responsible in part for the death of her son, which again, I don't think is necessarily true, but like could easily be seen that way, especially by a mother in grief. So I understand why she didn't go back.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like I do see like the logical reasons why. I guess for whatever reason at the end of last episode, I was expecting it to be like, oh, now Bela and Rhaena have been like reunited and they're going to have to go like admit that they've both kind of fucked up a little bit to Rhaenyra. And so, yeah, I wasn't expecting, I guess, Bela to now kind of like almost double down on betraying Rhaenyra a little bit by not giving her the full truth of what happened. But again, I understand why. I understand why everyone's trying to kind of like cover your ass, you know? But yeah, I find it interesting. And so, yeah, I'm kind of left being like, huh, now what is going to happen with Rhaena?
Yeah.
Like, how
I'm
long
curious
is
to see
she
how that
just going to
story's
be
gonna go.
like flying around the Vale with Sheepstealer? Are we going to keep getting like intermittent Sheepstealer feeding her scenes?
Just
That
eating
would be
those
fun.
sheep?
His little like underbite.
I was talking with my partner about this. We're just like, look, Sheepstealer did nothing wrong. He was just scared. The guy just was going around eating sheep, and then some poor girl rides him into battle, and he's scared. You know, he's just
screaming
doing his
orders in a
best.
language he's never learned.
Yeah, poor Sheepstealer. He's just doing his best as a little underbite dragon. We feel bad for him. Well, moving on, we have Daemon and the Riverlords are celebrating their victory with like a banging song, I should say, by the way. I really liked it.
Fish feed.
Yeah, I was like, I could listen to this. That's a new Game of Thrones banger, which is, you know, saying something considering we have a few Game of Thrones bangers in the history. When the news arrives about Jace, brought by Lord Simon Strong, Rhaenyra's message to Daemon prompts him to immediately order their army to march towards King's Landing while he rides ahead on his dragon Craxes to aid Rhaenyra's sack of the city. What did you think of this sequence?
I love it all, like kind of jarring tonal shift, you know, like this like jaunty music starts right as like Rhaena's scene is fading away. But yes, very fun. I think you know, gives us that little taste of what it's like to be on Team Black on the ground. Looks a lot more fun than what Kristen Cole's guys are doing.
Kristen Cole's just doing dour, like very puritanical stuff, and like Matt Damon, why am I saying Matt Damon? Matt Damon. I'm gonna leave that in because that's too funny of a mistake. Matt Smith is just here hanging out, drinking, palling around. Clearly the better side to be hanging out with.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think that you pointed this out last episode, how it was strategic on the writers' side to have Rhaenyra's folks referring like correctly to Admiral Lohar as she, with like accurate pronouns, effectively accepting that like there can be women admirals and like that they're just as like, badass as men, or that,
and also the trans aspect as well. But also, yes, that too, which
1,000%
is odd. Again, it read to me as like an odd, like, we want to make sure we're progressive to trans people, and I'm like, I appreciate that, like I understand that, but also like, it's medieval times, we could be messy with that. I understand, it's as long as you're intentional about it. But anyway, that's a different conversation.
But this scene was also giving like, this scene with, you know, Team Rhaenyra was giving me like, oh, we actually like believe in the power of diversity of both like, you know, you have one of the notable guys who's like singing and cheersing in this is the leader of the Greybeards who just came down from the north. His name is Roderick, Lord of Barrowtown, Roderick Dustin, known as Roddy the Ruin. And in, you know, in Fire and Blood, it says, quote, his host was made up of grizzled graybeards and old male and ragged skins, every man a seasoned warrior. They called themselves the Winter Wolves. And so we have like the Winter Wolves mixed in here with like the very young Oscar Tully. And then we also get, I believe this is our very first look at Alicent Blackwood, who is a character in the book. We'll go into this more in our bonus episode, but like worth noting, she's the woman who like has like black makeup kind of like streaked across her eyes and a big, you know, epic braid down her center. And she's like cheersing with Roddy the Ruin at one point. And yeah, it just felt to me like this like really quick summation of like, yeah, we're the ones who include everybody. Like we're the ones who respect, your status as a warrior, regardless if you're, teenage Oscar Tully or a graybeard or a woman. So I did like that for this scene. And yeah, I realized I missed Simon Strong. Like as soon as he appeared, I was like, oh, I missed you and Damon chit-chatting. And then, that bit me in the butt like 30 minutes later.
To be fair, it bit someone else in the butt too. Quite literally. But yeah, what I also like about this scene too, just to say it really quickly, is again, I like seeing Damon's growth.
Yes.
There's just this whole season. There is a sense of change in Damon's character, as we'll also catch a little bit later on in this episode. There's a moment I actually really like.
There's a few moments that we could touch on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll actually get a very clear juxtaposition with him with Amond later this episode too. And I just, again, I like seeing Damon's leadership in this moment and liking to see like how he's grown and actually just being like, here's the orders. You do this. I'll give you a big, yeah, we'll see you there and we'll kick butt. And I'm going to go off and help my wife, going to be a good wife guy. So I thought that, I like that bit of the scene as well.
Yeah, he really steered them through the storm of what that news could have possibly been. And yes, very different than I was thinking of the time when he was fighting the Triarchy and got a message and then beat the shit out of probably killed, I think, the messenger who brought him that. And yes, that was crystal clear juxtaposition right there.
Yeah, it's a lot of showing how he's grown. I think it's very, very well handled and subtle, and I like it both in performance and writing. Moving on, though, we have Alice asks Damon to vouch for her as the next Lady of Harrenhal before he leaves, but he turns her down and says, maybe we'll find other ways to reward you. I'll speak to Rhenerya, and she gets very kind of annoyed and pissed at this and says, never come back. So interesting little bit there between the two of them. So.
Yeah. And also I love that scene, the transition of that scene was just that massive shot of Caraxes dipping his head in the lake to drink. Again, a thing that was probably expensive to create and have that moment of, but just added so much depth and texture to this world. And dragons are puppies or this feeling. Yeah. And all of the little whistle sounds again from the dragons in this episode were so cool. There just really are all of these great details that make me love this show and this world. And so shout out to whoever was on Team Dragon this episode. I know it's many of you. Y'all did great.
They did. And then something that you put in your notes, just don't want to, because I think it's interesting, is the classism that Damon portrays here of not wanting to give her Harrenhal because she's not a person with titles, and she clearly has done enough to deserve it, and certainly is better than probably anyone else who's run this thing. But yeah, he definitely has that classism involved in him for all of his growth, which goes with all the Targaryens, frankly. But
yeah, and it feeds into something else that's kind of an undercurrent of this episode, which is Damon accidentally reinforcing Ulf's negative feelings about being treated as lesser than simply because of where he was born from. And so we watch Damon do it to Alice in this episode, and then later Damon's picking directly at Ulf and kind of beating up on him, and you're kind of Damon, this is a bit of a blind spot for you still, even though you've come so far.
Yes.
But we have ways to go.
Well, still ways to go, all right. He's trying, all right. He's doing his best.
Yeah. And when Alice says, remember what I told you, I think she's referring to when she kind of creeped him out by saying you will die here. Right. In Harrenhal.
Yeah. She says something like that. Yeah.
She said that last season to him. So if anyone was wondering what her final little quip at him was about.
It's about that.
She's trying to plant some mortality freak in his in his mind.
Witches, y'all, they just do this prophecy stuff, and it's never good. Never ends well for anybody in this franchise. So we then jump over to Bela talks with Alan about Lord Corlys, while Adam succeeds in finding him. This is a fun little discussion here where they talk about, Alan's feelings about his father, and Bela sort of talks about her childhood with him and how well she knows him. It's a nice little scene, and they sort of talk about he isn't dead yet, and I was oh, are they setting this up we'll be looking for him for a while? But it's no, he's fine immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is a nice little scene. If you have anything you want to add about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was expecting a little bit more, I guess, like a more up close version of what exactly happened in Spice Town and around their castle, because they just keep showing us in the distance.
Yeah,
but
I think they just didn't want to do the whole set for that, probably. Like,
that
gotta
is
save budget somewhere, I think. Yeah.
totally understandable. But in case you're watching at home and you don't understand that, like, the implication is that, like, you know, everyone who could be killed was killed on that island, that all of the treasure that Corlys spent his entire life amassing has been like dumped into the sea or taken by members of the Triarchy, because during the battle, basically Admiral Lohar like sent a little side mission of people over to ruin his legacy, so to speak. And so yeah, this idea that all he has left is his name, and what good lies in that. But Alan takes a lot of meaning from being finally granted, basically being unbastardized, as it were.
His name. I think he says, like, I would consider that something along the lines of, I would consider that a greater treasure than anything else you could give me.
Than like the gold he might have inherited or might have been given. So yeah, a nice little moment with the Valarians here, and like I think an interesting family moment, kind of juxtaposing with the Targaryens. You kind of see how like this family is still trying to stay together throughout the wartime difficulties, whereas virtually every other family is fracturing rapidly.
Maybe the real sea plunder was the family we made along the way. Well, we have a brief check-in with our lovely little two-hander duo here with Larys and Aegon. Their party gets attacked by the Triarchy, and they kill their way to freedom. Aegon insists on going towards Rook's Rest instead of the coast, as Larys wishes. This is a fun little comedic beat. I love the moment where he opens the door. He's like, oh, I know, I am shocked and surprised. Looked like Lannister actually, I think he calls him a peacock in his line. It's like, oh, it looks like he actually managed to get the Triarchy to come. And I liked that moment. And then there's also a brutal kill by Aegon with one of the people with the with an arrow, which I learned from either the podcast or the after show. I forget which one, but that was an actor choice. The actor came up with that to do, which I think was interesting. I think the actor just wanted to stab somebody.
It did kind of feel like Aegon's a little bored and needs some action. But Tom Glencarney, you were giving me Aegon is unhinged, and took like one of the toughest, not toughest, but like, that's a gnarly way to decide to stab someone who was like clearly like a young, terrified teenager in of themselves. This I just to talk about it in the scene, or with regards to the scene, but I could apply it to any other thing. I also found it very compelling that they showed us so closely what it looks like for Rhaenyra to be grieving Jace, and seeing his body and having these final moments with her child. And again, this is like something else that's just happened to me since birthing a child myself. But I'm like, really, I look around and I'm like, everyone is a mother or a mother's child in this world, like for the most part. But I don't know what for the most part means, but you know what I mean.
I mean, I would generally say, I don't think there's many test tube babies or clones in the game.
No, but yes, I suppose in case I have a blind spot, I'm hedging that. But yes, and like truly, as we saw all of these shots of like hundreds, if not thousands, of people dying in this episode alone, it was like every single one of those people has parents that are going to react similarly to seeing their body bloodied and cold. And I felt that in this moment with this one guy where I was like, geez, like, what? Okay. But again, it's like a drop in the bucket in what this conflict is causing on the continent of Westeros.
Well, we go on. Alicent's plot for a less bloody sack of the city gets pushed into motion when she sees Aemond leaving King's Landing. So she goes to visit Luther Largent, the commander of the City Watch, and we get a bunch of naked guys, full frontal with some guys in this scene. But she tries to see if this guy is willing to get in on her plan. Just remind us, who is this guy?
So I'm pretty sure that we haven't actually seen him on the show yet, but the dialogue was kind of helping almost retcon him into being part of the Gold Cloaks crew that Damon very much was involved with back in the first episodes of season 1.
Which becomes important towards the end of this episode. So.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I think that they were effectively trying to just tell us, like, yeah, by the way, this guy was definitely named a Gold Cloak. He happens to be in charge now, and he is still a Damon and Rhaenyra loyalist, which we see pockets of this throughout the whole episode, that it's basically like every subset of army or fighting power that exists on the plane will have its infighting, basically. So yeah, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just going to say, it reminds me of Mr. Poopy Butthole from Rick and Morty, if you know what I'm talking about. Whereas, like, this guy was definitely around the entire time. Don't worry about it. You definitely remember him from season 1, sure, right?
We know this guy. Yeah,
if you don't know who Mr. Poopy Butthole is, listeners, trust me, it was a thing that existed before I said that name.
I'm glad to know now.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't know, so you just thought
I didn't know.
No, it's a character from Rick and Morty where there's an episode where they're like, oh, these characters who are definitely part of this show for a very long time that you definitely remember, and this character's never actually appeared before, but they're just a character that's popped up. It's just a funny thing. So it's a similar dynamic here in a more serious way.
In a much more serious fashion. Yeah, and I, again, I guess I appreciate that the most nudity we get in this episode was some more dongs. House of the Dongs.
Equal opportunity dongs, I'm here for it. So, yeah. Well, Damon arrives back to Dragonstone, where he finds Hugh and Ulf waiting rather uselessly for Rhaenyra to be ready to speak to anyone. Damon immediately chastises them for abandoning their station at Harrenhal and backhands Ulf when the older man tries justifying abandoning their mission. And this kind of goes to what you were talking about earlier, but anything to say about this scene?
I mean, I did genuinely like guffaw a little bit when Ulf like half tried to hug Damon as he re-entered the room. I think Ulf continues to feel almost like a contemporary guy who's been dropped into Westeros sometimes. Like I get this vibe from him, which I kind of like. It's like a different energy than we usually see from minor characters in the show. And yeah, just more seeding what's been going on with Ulf, feeling kind of disillusioned by the reality of what it means to be a dragon rider under Rhaenyra. And I was also like, I feel like usually in the past I've been like, Damon, you are going a little too far here. In this scene, I was like, yeah, Damon, tell them what's up, because that was really dumb. And like, it is very silly that so many people are not adhering to what Rhaenyra says, despite her supposedly being their queen. And so, yeah, good scene. Again, I think showed the growth of Damon and also gave us a little more insight into
the classism involved.
Yeah, like the bitterness that Ulf feels at still being treated like an outsider or dumb, despite really just wanting to be respected.
Yeah, no, it works. And very rare when I'm on Damon's side. The show's making me be on Damon's side a hell of a lot more than
it really is.
It's typical for him. So fascinating. Speaking of which, Damon and Mysaria talk outside of Rhaenyra's room, finally confronting their long history and the triangular nature of their shared relationship with the Queen. One thing that I wanted to note about this that I think is interesting with Mysaria. So last season, the two Mysaria and Rhaenyra kissed. And there seems to have been there's some acknowledgement or like awareness of that in the performance here, but it's never also explicitly discussed. Like, not that Damon would know, but Mysaria also doesn't really say it either. And the reason I bring that up is just because I know that kiss was a decision by the actors. The actors found that kiss rather than it being an explicit decision by the writers of the show. And it's one thing where I hope they are able to, like, not that I need the show to be like suddenly like they're in a romance and things like that, but I hope it gets a little bit more drawn out, like the like actual romantic elements between the two of them potentially, just because I've seen in other shows. For example, I'm a Trekkie. If anyone's a Trekkie with me, there's a show called Star Trek Picard. And in that show, there was similarly two women actors who found that their characters had feelings for each other in their performance. And then the subsequent seasons of that show proceeded to never know what to do with those two characters. So they like got together and then broke up between seasons, and then then the next season is them getting together, and then between the next season after that they broke up off screen again. And so it was like this constant like straight writers not knowing how to like write queer characters really well, especially when the actors found it and there was not an intention with it going into the story. So I just bring it up here because I do like this dynamic of Damon kind of like being aware that there's something more going on here, and it adds a really interesting subtext to the scene by the actors and the performance. But it's just something I'm not judging the show for yet, but it is something I'm like hopeful that they are able to definitely handle it better, especially since it was an actor choice, not like an intentional writing plan that they had going into the show.
Yeah, it does feel to me like in this scene, the subtext of that is, it feels very intentional to me. So I would be surprised if we drop any implication of that from this point forward. Especially
hope so,
like the fact that they bring in the bond with Alicent in this same scene too. I'm like, okay, so all of the subtext around Rhaenyra and Alicent also having romantic feelings for one another is tied up in like the implication that Daemon kind of knows about Mysaria. Also, like a lot of reminders in this episode that Daemon was a fully grown man when Rhaenyra was a girl. And like even
grooming, and he was very clearly grooming her episode 1.
Just again like the history of these characters kind of being brought back to the forefront, I think is very intriguing, and I want to see more of it.
Yeah, and one thing, I guess we should talk about it now since it's kind of connects here. There's a moment that I like later on where Daemon brings it up to Rhaenyra as they're walking out towards going to King's Landing, where he sort of brings up Mysaria's like, oh, you've taken on a new advisor. And she's like, I don't need your judgment.
And he's like, I was making an observation, bro.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of like, hey, you know, and again, it's not explicitly stated, but again, the subtext very much feels, whether it's in the performance or the intention of the writing, is like, hey, I approve of you. Like, I'm not trying to judge your relationship with someone else. I get it. We all have our complicated, you know, relationships. I've had my own. It feels like, again, growth from his
I have wet dreams about my mom. You have...
it's all fine, you know? Like a little bit of growth from Daemon in that sequence that I really liked, sort of bringing that full circle. And then there's also this other line where they're talking about Alicent, and he doesn't trust Alicent. He's I believe Alicent is by nature a conspirator rather than one who openly deceives. And I think he's correct, you know?
Yeah. I thought that was a really interesting and true characterization of Alicent, that like in her one-on-one conversations with people, and we even see in this episode, she has like an earnestness and like an authenticity to her, and like pretty like it's like she seeks out the people that she wants to be honest with and yes, like conspire with, and it's less that, yes, she's walking around telling a bunch of people different lies and things. And I do find that a very a more compelling approach to her type of character. And then, yes, of course, Mysaria adding to that, or perhaps a tool, which I would argue in this season, and like I suppose starting with her secretly going to Rhaenyra, Alicent has actually managed to be exercising a lot of autonomy, but it's like this is new for her because she has actually in the past been sometimes unwittingly and sometimes wittingly working as a tool of the patriarchy, of her father, of the High Towers in general. So yes, very interesting that Mysaria called that out too.
Well, we have a quick scene here where Daemon and Rhaenyra reunite and have an important conversation about needing to transcend her grief over Jace's death. And I also believe this is the scene too where we get a little allusion to what Daemon had seen in his prophecy, and a little hint of Dany from Game of Thrones is alluded to in that, even though he doesn't know that is the case. But yeah, this is a really, really great scene. You know, I'm curious what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I think when I saw like the, like, you know, next time on House of the Dragon. I almost said Game of Thrones. Jesus. Preview from last week. Like, yeah, I saw this shot of Daemon embracing Rhaenyra in her bed while she was sobbing, and I was like, oh, like I know this is going to be difficult for me to watch. The grief of this, and yeah, once again, I just think like the physicality of Emma Darcy's performance of like trying to get rest but being very stiff at the same time, and like so exhausted that you truly are like, I can't even talk about anything else, like I am maxed out on brain power. And the fact that, you know, the only thing to really perk Rhaenyra up is the news that like Aemond truly has left the city, that like this chance that she hasn't been entirely lost to her. And Daemon being able to motivate her by, yes, bringing in the reminder of the prophecy. But again, like the exact quote that Daemon says is, if it is real what my brother told you, if it were true, then what would you do? And I was like, God, again, like reminding us in this moment that he's her uncle.
Yeah.
Like really pointedly. You know, like the dynamics of all of that. It's also such an, again, like crazy contrast to the version of Daemon that reacted to being first told that this prophecy even existed, let alone that he hadn't been clued in on it. So again, you're really seeing in this moment that like Daemon is fully bought in on what visions he saw, what the Song of Ice and Fire means, this threat of the White Walkers. Like he's effectively coming to Rhaenyra in this moment and being like, you need to transcend anything you're feeling about this imminent disaster that we're in, because it's not the real disaster. Disaster's actually farther ahead, and it's our job to like carry this line through.
I saw the last season of Game of Thrones. I know disaster's ahead. Yeah.
And yeah, I got ahead of myself a little bit, but gosh, just again, Rhaenyra talking about her sons in this moment, when she's like saying that those boys who clung to her like hid in her skirts. I immediately thought of the scene back from season 1 at Driftmark when Alicent was coming at Rhaenyra, and this was when Aemond lost his eyeball, you know, and Rhaenyra was like holding the boys on either side of her, and yeah, it just really is devastating to think of what she's had to sacrifice so far in order to still try to achieve this. And it's understandable to me in that moment that she's like, I don't like, this doesn't feel worth it anymore, and Daemon has to be the one to tell her that it's worth it. But also the fact that like, again, the last thing we hear in this intimate moment between them, and also I love that they're speaking in High Valyrian, like both Matt Smith and Emma Darcy are like this feels like a real lived in language of theirs, and it always brings about a more what's the right word, like not ceremony, but like
sense of like weight and history and like regality to it and importance, you know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. And like reminds you of like the specificity of the Targaryens in this culture, and
the fact that they are from another culture separate from Westeros as well.
And that he asks her like, if it's real, what would you do? And I kind of left being like, I wonder like what her answer is going to be to that. And then when we see her next, which we'll get into this more as we outline all of the specifics of how this episode ends, but like I'm like literally Rhaenyra is carrying herself differently from this moment on, and my guess is that that's probably going to be kind of permanent for us, the audience, to be watching. But I feel like she literally starts walking like a combination of Viserys and Daemon after this moment. And it's
she
like
definitely like carries herself with like purpose and
yes, and it feels like that's part of her answer is like, okay, me, Rhaenyra, is having trouble moving forward through this moment, but how do I somehow overcome that part of myself and embody this different type of ruler? And you totally see it happen, and I think it's really cool.
This is, of course, a Cast of Kings, a Decoding TV podcast. Don't forget, if you want to support this show, please consider becoming a paid member at decodingtv.com, where you can also get ad-free episodes of this show as well as others. But before we jump back into the episode, Kim, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
Well, you can find my book at most bookstores, online. I really encourage people to go see if the unofficial guide to Game of Thrones is at your local library, because I have found it there before and I love libraries. So go both, support my work and support a library at the same time. And it's also really good for accompanying like a rewatch of Game of Thrones if anyone's in the mood for that.
Do it. And you can find me, one thing I'll just quick promote that I'm working on this week. I'm also doing another podcast, because I do too many podcasts, called
Never too many podcasts from you, Jesse.
Too many.
More.
It was funny because at my party last night, there was like 3 of my separate podcast co-hosts all at once.
You are such a cool, popular podcasting host, Jesse. And I hope that we see hundreds of more.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I need sleep. But just to quick promote it, I'm doing a podcast called Starter Trek, which is a podcast that I am producing with none other than Tawny Newsome, who is the voice of Beckett Mariner on Star Trek Lower Decks, as well as a writer on Star Trek Starfleet Academy. And she is taking her best friend, or one of her best friends, Andrew T, through random episodes of Star Trek that he has never seen before, because he has not seen Star Trek. And it's a very fun comedic time. And I am there to be the Trekkie nerd in the room who can actually them whenever they get something wrong. So it's a very fun time. We're really excited about it. It's on YouTube and anywhere you can find your own podcasts. But yeah, it is called Starter Trek, so please check that out. But enough about us. Let us get back into the episode. This is the scene that I think we'll have a little bit to say on, because we get back to Alicent's assigned Kingsguard, Sir Rickard, tries to tell her she can't leave his sight again, but she does anyways. This presumably prompts him to go to Lord Jasper Wilde, Master of Laws, to snitch. The Iron Rod, as his name is, finds Alicent in her room, packing a bag. He attempts to rape her and is stopped at the last moment by Master Orwyle, who arrests him. So yeah, just to start off this one,
let's just both do this for a second.
Yeah,
which is putting our hands on our face and covering our eyes.
I despised this scene so much, because it just felt like using rape and sexual assault in a kind of flippant and really unintentional way. And it really feels like done to just sort of like really kind of torture Alicent a little bit more, and also to make us hate Iron Rod, so that when he does get, spoiler I guess here, he gets killed at the end of the episode, and I think it just make us not care as much about his death, and he can just be a guy to be killed. And like, look, to be clear, I am, this is a show that is very much about how women are treated, and I'm not, saying you can never show rape or sexual assault in a TV show. I think there are useful ways to do it, but here it just felt kind of flippant, unnecessary for this episode, and just feels a little bit cruel. And as a creative choice, I was really not a big fan of it. I think if you're going to show something like that, which the show has done and Game of Thrones has shown, with to varying degrees of criticism, both worthwhile and not. Certainly, I think the show has done some good ones, some bad ones, but this one just felt very unnecessary, and is my least favorite scene of the entire episode.
Yeah, same. I did not care for this at all. Yeah. I picked up on what was happening as soon as he started closing the door and talking about remembering her as a girl at the same time. I was like, please, no. Like,
yeah, I saw it coming too, and I'm like, please don't go this direction. And they did, and I'm just like,
I was like, there can't be anything else that's going on here. And then I was right. And yeah, just watching Alicent needing to struggle through that. I mean, Olivia Cooke is also dishing out like incredible performances throughout this entire series, I would say. Like, her panic and realization of the position that she's in felt very real.
Certainly the performance was not the problem.
No, not at all. And like, and I mean, truly on the part of the actor behind Lord Jasper as well, like when she did, it's like she goes through all of like the bargaining stages with him. Like, she reminds him that to put his hands on her would be punishable by death. That doesn't matter to him. Then she says like, Lord Jasper, please, at one point, and he like gets off on that effectively, where he says like, say that again. And I was like, I am quite frankly over being like physically reminded of what it's like to be demeaned, assaulted, humiliated, rendered powerless despite allegedly having a lot of power. And yeah, I couldn't, not like I couldn't think of a reason why it's happening. My theory on why this happens in the episode is because I think it helps show truly the level of like persistence and sacrifice and risk that Alicent took in pulling off this plan, to the point that like there was a chance she was literally going to be raped in order to keep this secret effectively, that she was like going to, like I thought that that's kind of what Lord Jasper was. Not Lord,
I feel like you just didn't need.
I
think he's Lord Jasper. It's just like I don't think you needed. And I agree with. I think that's the reason why they did this. I think you're correct and astute in that. I think it's just like you could have shown the threat to her without needing to go in this kind of flippant use of sexual assault. I feel like
right, and to show us like the full struggle and interaction. Like we've seen that so many. Like we saw it with Sansa back in Game of Thrones. Like that was also very difficult to watch.
Yeah,
like,
it's a bit spectacleizing the affair in a
right. Like you could have gotten the point of this scene across without literally showing us up close. Like the detail of him like calmly folding her arms behind her back, which read to me like a very practiced gesture. And again, I'm like, I really don't want to think of all the other times that this man has done this. Yeah, hated that. Loved Orwell coming in to save the day.
Oh yeah, great.
Like,
our Maester boy just doing his best.
At least we got that. And then I think that was also like, added to, I was really, by the time that like, okay, we've killed Simon. I know we haven't gotten to that in our breakdown yet, but like by the time that Orwell was like once again under threat, I was like, don't kill him after he just was like one of the few stand-up people in this castle. So I was relieved to see him make it through this episode. But yeah, just didn't love that. And
it's the one downer in this whole episode for me. Yep. I think it's literally the only scene in this episode where I'm like, yeah, I think that's the thing that I hate, and everything else in this episode I really loved. Well, moving on, we next see Rhaenyra coming down from her room, ready to go at last to claim her throne. Her council once again tries to talk her out of it, while Mysaria is there to provide the crown and emotional support. So we get all of that. We kind of talked a little bit about the stuff with Daemon as well there. We also get a moment where he also again chastises Ulf. It's like, you will not be thinking again.
Like pokes him on the head. Like,
yes,
really reminding me of like, again, like you don't have bodily autonomy. I can mess with you however I want. And you can't do anything about it without.
And Ulf just wants to be, again, with the hug, he just wants to be a bro,
Yeah.
He just wants to be a bro.
Yeah.
And
they're missing cues.
Yep. And
also interesting in the scene before we move on that Mysaria hands Rhaenyra the crown. She does not wear it at any point in this episode, which also felt like it was adding to the sort of like shakiness that Rhaenyra was experiencing, despite having a lot of conviction.
Yes. We also get a quick little offhanded thing where she says, let Sir Laurent choose how he will die. So sadly, poor Sir Laurent. I mean, I feel bad that, people just get killed willy-nilly in this world, but like, dude brought it on himself in many ways. So he does not off the front.
How do you think he's going to pick?
I mean, if I were him, if I was going to be a little shit, I would be like, I choose to die old and happy, living in a field somewhere, and be like, well, the queen did say let you choose. So
technically let me pick.
Way to like try and legally ease your way out of that. I don't think it would work, but that would be how I would answer that question.
If I was him, I would go like, down to my underclothes and let a dragon eat me. Not burn me alive, but like
eat me.
Yeah,
I feel like that'd be the chewing, because if you don't get killed the first time, you're gonna be chewed.
That's true. But I feel like it's a cooler way to go out than being like, just behead me.
Yeah, it's true. It's memorable. I'd probably want to like jump off. I feel like it'd be fun to jump off of somewhere high if I had to choose somewhere.
Oh,
yeah, because then
Dragonstone's full of high peaks.
Yeah, you'll die pretty instantaneously, and you'll also get a fun little ride going down. It'd be kind of fun. Yeah. Well, now that we said that, well, the 4 dragons fly out from Dragonstone, but we jump over to King's Landing very briefly here, where Alicent gets her daughter Helena from the Godswood and tries to enlist her into this new conspiracy, while also trying to apologize for the first conspiracy she wound up enabling, the usurping of Rhaenyra's position as rightful queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Together, they manage to convince the sentries with dragon-killing weapons to hold fire when they see Rhaenyra approach. Did really like this little bit because we get moments where, you know, we see that Alicent still really cares for her daughter. And it's like, you're the one that I can redeem, unlike my other 2 piece of shit sons is kind of the implication there. And we also get a nice moment where they go to the Queensguard and they convince this guy, and I like Helena say, I will not have any beast harmed. Like, girl just wants, like she says, she just wants to raise chickens. Yeah. And I'm just like, you know, girl just wants to be a farm girl, and, you know, I love that for her, you know?
It also felt to me, and maybe this is me reading too much into it, but it felt to me like Alicent and Helena, like, almost like that Helena, like, almost instinctively was like, I'm going to play the crazy girl for a second. Like, I'm going to play the, like, like, mad queen who's like, I just don't want any animals to be harmed, but, like, technically her word is law. And perhaps unlike with some of the people around Rhaenyra, a lot of these folks will do whatever the Dowager Queen or Queen orders them to. And so this was another interesting moment of, like, you're seeing that internal faction. Ultimately, the side wins out who lay down their weapons, but you can imagine that some soldiers walked away from that interaction being like, oh boy, like, you know, trickery is afoot.
I think the thing that finally convinced them is, like, not the 2 women, because I don't think he necessarily would, like, I think there was a debate in his head, but I think the thing that finally convinced him is when Alicent said, like, oh, are you going to burn? And he's like, oh yeah, I probably would die in that situation. Like, maybe not, but probably.
If I truly let, I know earlier in my summary I described it as, like, Rhaenyra coming to sack the city. Technically, she's not trying to sack the city. She's trying to bloodlessly take it over. But obviously the implication is that if things go wrong, if the plan goes wrong, that's what would happen.
You want a Dany? Because that's how you get a Dany, you know?
I also, just side note, did manage to pause and read what was in Helena's notebook when she was, because like, I also thought it was interesting in this Godswood scene. I perk up whenever I see this Godswood because it's not really supposed to be there. Everyone, not everyone, but like, I've noticed this ever since like the first season, where I was like, oh, they've really built out this full Godswood set with a intact Godswood tree, which is again connected to the magic of the land, and things like green seeing. And I've always kind of wondered if that was put there because there is some sort of underlying tone of like magic or future or past vision seeing happening through this sort of like, it's like a little like liminal space of Westeros. And I'm like, okay, like if Helena's been in there, she notes that like this caterpillar technically shouldn't have been there. I'm like, oh my God, are there shapeshifters in Westeros now? That caterpillar is a man. Not really, but who knows?
It just turn into a beautiful butterfly. You know?
But on her notebook, she has what looks like a partially completed drawing of a butterfly. And then it says that it's a specific butterfly species from Noth, which I don't know how many people remember that Missandei in Game of Thrones, one of Dany's advisors, the one who was horribly executed by Cersei and kind of like was part of the impetus for Dany losing her marbles and not losing her marbles, but just, you know, moving forward with blood and vengeance in mind as opposed to anything else. Missandei was from Noth, and Grey Worm, who was, again, part of Dany's cohort and was in love with Missandei. At the end of Game of Thrones, he like says that he's going to sail off to Noth and that like his life's mission will be that he's going to go protect that island where like his love came from. And people took note online later, like after the finale, that it's in A World of Ice and Fire, another one of George R. R. Martin's, you know, encyclopedic books about this world, that Noth is inhabited by these poisonous butterflies that kill people. And so everyone was like, oh, did Grey Worm just like sail to his death
and die
then? And this notebook page that Helena is working on literally says of these butterflies of Noth, they are said to cause death to people around them while living, but so far I remain alive.
Yeah.
which I thought was funny because it's both getting at like maybe that's not true. Like it feels like it's kind of Easter egging this meta theory about what happened to Grey Worm on the island, that like maybe it's not true that the butterflies cause death. But also I was like, oh, are they kind of implying that Helena is attempting to die and she's like spending time like that, she's like she has these like maybe like undertones of suicidal ideation where she's like, oh, maybe if I go spend enough time with the poisonous butterflies, like they'll just take care of the situation I have found
like
myself
not necessarily
in.
Suicidal, but like death wishy, you know,
yeah
which I think fits with what her mother wants for her. Is like, I want you to be happy. So I think that alludes to that.
Yeah.
Well, we jump over and we have Aemond signals Kristen Cole and the men to head towards Harrenhal while he flies ahead and sacks the castle. Vhagar makes a quick roast of the garrison and household staff Daemon left behind. This is where we get that one like sequence where we see a lot of guys on fire that I was alluding to earlier. That was really cool. And then Aemond carries on foot, slicing down every man he sees. But after killing Lord Simon Strong in cold blood, Aemond is stabbed in the back by one of his sons before our witch girl shows up and he says, please help me, as she watches. So interesting things with this one that I found fascinating. There were some good parallels. I think they bring this up in the inside the episode afterwards as parallels to Daemon's sacking of Harrenhal. But the difference is like Daemon at the end like stops and like eats the food and like listens to Lord Simon Strong. And here Aemond just like, you know, is very aggressive. And it kind of shows the parallel between those two characters. They've always been kind of paralleled in the narrative in a lot of ways of like Aemond kind of being who Daemon was when he was younger and how Daemon's kind of grown a little bit. Still a jerk at times, but grown a little bit more. My only other thing with this too is like, oh, Simon, I appreciate you trying to do the like, hey, I'm just here, my guy, sort of thing. But like, man, just asked you to take up a sword. Don't walk right up to him and let him stab you.
And, like, pat his shoulders.
Yeah, it's like a lot of like touching royalty in this episode, which like I feel like people should be smarter than that. Like, don't touch royals who might have some desire to kill you. Like, I feel like it's not going to end well for you. But yes, so I thought that was a good sequence, and obviously we're setting up some sort of interesting relationship between this the witch and Aemond in contrast to Daemon. After he sort of abandoned her earlier in the episode.
Yeah, really interesting timing going on there. And I really just loved the shots, all of these big sweeping shots of Vhagar flying around the castle and eventually like landing in Harrenhal. Vhagar is, of course, like the biggest dragon, smaller than Balerion the Black Dread, but still largest living dragon in recent memory. And Harrenhal is like a notoriously kind of like monstrous, this is the biggest, also like the biggest castle in Westeros. And so seeing that like their scale was almost well matched, but then with like itty bitty people on the ground, it was very cool. I really loved, again, like the directing of these shots and seeing these overhead views of the castles. We get it later in King's Landing too, like a real like aerial shot of the actual like layout of the castle and everything.
I always love shots in this show where we have like actors in the front and like the dragon also doing things in the background. We get a few of those shots this episode, and those are always some of my favorite shots in the show, where like also, the dragons are doing things in the background. The
bats flying out of the tower, and then just like the partial shadow, again, just showing the insane scale of Vhagar compared to normal everyday things, was very cool.
Well, we jump back over to King's Landing, and we have Rhaenyra pulling off her Queen's Landing, which I will just say is just a thing that I've been excited for since the book, reading the book and forming. So excited we finally get to it. She successfully flies into the city, walks into the Red Keep with Daemon at her side to kill any that stand in their way, of which there are quite a few, including one guy who just like stands with his mouth open after being stabbed by Daemon for a second, which was pretty gnarly. And though Rhaenyra carries a sword, she shows no inclination to use it until they reach the throne room. A small band of Kingsguard and Hightower loyal soldiers try to block their way up to the Iron Throne, but the Gold Cloaks arrive to save the moment, and Mr. Poopy Butthole shows up to be like, hey, Daemon, you remember us being friends way back in season 1? That definitely was an on-screen experience that we had, and manages to be the ones to sort of allow Rhaenyra to officially take the throne. This was, for me, I loved this whole sequence. I loved the two of them Darcy and Matt Smith together. Really felt like power couple vibes of like him going forward and like killing people, like her staying in there, like keeping an eye out to make sure like other people were coming up on her, and him just kicking ass during all of that sequence was just a really good bit. And then that moment where you're, you know, I knew it was going to happen because we both read the books, but like that very tense moment of like when they're about to face off against all of these loyalists, and then the gold cloaks come in, and you're like, oh, they are screwed and they're going to die right here. And obviously there's a twist there. It was a really amazing sequence on all fronts of this, them walking through this. I love also, there's that shot too, again, the directing is great, it was like when they enter the castle of King's Landing, they like go into this darkness as they enter, and it was just a really well done shot. I really liked it a lot.
And like the specific like red black fade of Rhaenyra's cloak, she really looks the part. And especially in this entire sequence, you can see how Emma Darcy is imbuing Rhaenyra with a new physicality of approaching both like the sword at their side. It feels like Rhaenyra is now kind of like leaning on it and holding it very much the way that Daemon does. And then there's also a sort of asymmetry now to Rhaenyra's walk that reminds me of Viserys. And like, it's like she's trying to live up to, again, the last king who handed her this prophecy. And if that is now her driving motivation, she doesn't want this throne anymore for her children. She doesn't want this throne anymore for herself. I think that like we're meant to believe at this point that she's only standing on 2 feet at this point because Daemon has reminded her of this grand obligation that they have to save the world from something that is coming
from the final season of the show.
From the final season of the show.
I kid. I don't want to hate on that too much because it's an easy target, but it's making sense. So.
Also worth noting quickly in this scene as they fly over. We get these glimpses of like the small folk, of people in Flea Bottom and everyone rightfully panicking. I think at this point, all of the people in the city have been sold on the message that Rhaenyra is like a bloodthirsty, crazy queen. And of course, Daemon has like the worst reputation in Westeros. So seeing those two plus 2 more dragons come near, it's reasonable that everybody's like, oh, this is it. We're about to experience what we saw Dany do to the city in season 8 of Game of Thrones. And we get a glimpse at 2 characters that you might recognize, 2 women. One was Hugh's wife, who like he's presumably left after their child died, which is sad. We got like this like quick glimpse of her clocking the dragon. And then also the same woman who I believe like runs the brothel, or at least is like one of the primary sex workers who used to spend time with Aemond. We get a quick look at both of them. So I'm like, okay, like they're still looping us in a little bit to the small folk perspective. And I feel like we should probably anticipate that we're going to see those 2 again.
Yeah, no, that's good to see them. There's also a quick little sequence here that I just want to touch upon because it just threw me, where Alicent and Helena are trying to escape the city, and then they kind of get clocked, and as we know later by the end of the episode, they do get captured. And I'm like, part of that's on you, Alicent, because you were wearing the like nicest cloak I have ever seen. It's like this beautiful, like girls gotta make sure she's staying with the fashion when she's trying to escape a sacking of a city. And I was like, it's kind of on you for wearing the most regal outfit you could.
In like her signature color. You couldn't wear gray for one day, Alicent.
No, she's just she's got to make sure she's keeping up with her fashion. Yeah?
She did get interrupted packing her go bag with the threat of rape.
It's true. So I will forgive her a little bit.
that was the 60 seconds she was going to have an outfit change, and instead
we got that. Even another reason to hate the
old
scene.
Iron Rod.
Oh God, Jesus. Well, I'm glad what's about to happen to him, because in the climactic moments of the episode, Daemon brings Rhaenyra the 2 most prized prisoners who were in the dungeons, and I love his line. Is like, "Oh, the rats are getting right big in the cells." Lord Jasper and Otto Hightower. It's also worth noting that Otto was a gift from Laris. So that's an interesting little note there. But a mess is made of their executions right in the throne room, and Rhaenyra nearly loses her nerve entirely when it comes clear she has to be the one to behead Otto. The axe seems to shred Rhaenyra's composure, and she shakily makes her way to the throne. Just then, at the worst possible moment, it's revealed that Alicent and Helena were caught trying to escape the city, as we said, and they're brought to the throne room. Alicent looks at Rhaenyra in shock as she notices her father's beheaded body still cooling on the ground. What did you think of this sequence? Yep.
This was like, I suppose, a little encapsulation of maybe what I've been feeling for this series so far, of like, everything's going wrong. Like, you're watching people who have carefully laid plans walk into traps that were either intentionally set for them or that just happened to be like the world's worst coincidences. And I thought that this one was pulled off beautifully, again, because you see exactly how hard Alicent has been working to keep up her side of the bargain. She really had to go to like intense lengths and like really like risk her life multiple times by approaching multiple people and making this happen. Like, again, the gold cloaks moment that we're talking about, that doesn't happen if Alicent doesn't go and give them a heads up. She really saved Rhaenyra's ass multiple times throughout this episode, and to have Rhaenyra unexpectedly confronted with having to kill Alicent's father, which was not part of the plan, because again, Alicent, there's a lot of things that it's like all the right people just don't know what's going on. So I don't think anybody knew that Otto was in those dungeons except Laris and this one dungeon worker. Unionize the dungeon workers and we'll all know more about who's in prison. But it's been a notable question in people's minds since last season that like Otto presumably was going back home, and then the next time that we saw him, he was in what looked to us like a prison wagon. And then now he appears down there in the Red Keep. And so Alicent didn't even know that her father was down there, so didn't have it in her mind that he was at risk in this plan. Rhaenyra, I don't think, knows that Otto is no longer hand of the king. I'm not sure if she realizes that that was stripped from him and given to Kristen Cole. And so her and Daemon are like putting weight on this execution as being symbolic of her taking over the claim to the throne. But it doesn't actually mean that in this moment. And so she's doing this thing at the worst moment for reasons that aren't really valid and actually are most likely just going to come around and ruin the plan, because obviously part of the plan was that Alicent, Helena, and Jaehaera, who's Helena's last remaining child, she was also Helena was just kind of clinging to her. I thought that was funny. I was thinking of what we talked about last week with why Rhaenyra's two youngest sons weren't in the battle, and Ryan Condal saying like, oh, it's very difficult to get young children to do things like that. And like the way that they were holding this bundle, I was like, that just looks like a doll.
There's not a baby there.
Might be.
Sure.
It might have been a toddler. I feel like I saw a hand move. Maybe it was like
I would be shocked. The amount of like just for production stuff, like to have a baby on set is a big pain.
Or like a toddler. I don't know how old Jaehaera is supposed to be at this point.
Yeah, you're only allowed to have babies that work. They're only allowed to work for like, I think 30 minutes at a time on set.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's almost certainly a doll. So.
Yeah. It was just a funny detail of all of that. But yeah, the fact that it almost feels like Laris set a trap for Rhaenyra just on the off chance that she ever sacks the city, of being like, oh, I'm going to leave this treat for you. Of course, Daemon can't resist executing Otto Hightower.
Oh yeah, no,
and
he's
Rhaenyra has plenty of reasons to want the man dead as well, but you can so clearly see that she's having this like not like this moment. Mm-hmm. And I also just find it so fascinating that Rhaenyra hasn't yet trained herself to use a sword, or that like that seems to be contributing to her hesitation in this moment. Like when she says, Daemon's telling her like, if you wish to rule, show them you will not waver. Like, this is the moment. And like, Rhaenyra is just like falling apart. Like
I think even like Otto Hightower has like a snide comment of like, oh, let Daemon do it because I don't want to be hacked to bits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's also a line earlier from one of the loyalists before they sort of take the throne room where like Rhaenyra pulls her sword and is like, oh, now I've seen everything. So a lot of little chauvinism, sexism there.
Right.
Yeah.
And part of me is like, it's like disappointed that she's proving them right in a way, even though like that's not really what's happening. But like, I mean, I don't know. It's complicated, but like, I was having this thought in my head of like, Rhaenyra, we had this scene of you last season in private, like drawing the sword and like kind of pretending to use it. And I'm just like, what was getting in the way of anyone training you how to protect yourself with a weapon up until this point?
Sexism,
and,
I'm sure.
Well, right. Like the answer is misogyny. The answer is like, again, this probably ties into this line that she said last episode of like, I have the weak and feeble body of a woman. In this universe, people don't bother training women to use swords and weapons because the presumption is that you're not going to be strong enough, or you just don't have the inherent ability to become a master weapons user.
It's a thing that goes back to like Arya in season 1 of Game of Thrones, and like getting to be able to be trained by like her trainer, and her father supporting her in that, Ned supporting her in that, and that being a big deal. You know?
Yeah, totally. And like, yeah, it both felt realistic to the moment, and I was also like, yeah, it just sucks to see. It sucks to see her like given this test immediately and kind of failing it. She gets it on the second swing, but like it was really it was just very difficult to watch as someone who's so rooting for her. And I was like, again, not like this is all just like the worst things getting layered on top of each other right now.
It is one thing that I have complicated feelings on it. This is one thing let me put it this way. I think the drama of the scene is really, really good. And I think it's very meaty and juicy and fantastic. And the ending of this episode made me go like, oh, that's so good. That's such a great way to end this episode. And so on all of those fronts, I really like the scene. I also really like Daemon sort of in a way supporting her. Like it didn't come across the way it's performed as by Matt Smith as like, you need to do this to be strong and tough. It's like, he's kind of doing me like, you need to prove to them. Like it's kind of more matter of fact of like, this is what you gotta do. And there's a little bit of like, he's enjoying getting to see Otto die, but not in a way that's like demeaning to, you know, Rhaenyra in like telling her you need to like be strong sort of thing in a sort of judgmental way. And I liked that. But one element of this that I have mixed feelings on, and I think it works in either way, but it kind of goes back to, as you were saying, that line about like, I have the weak and feeble body of a woman, where I'm like, to a degree, I understand Rhaenyra's feeling on this. She also just lost a kid, so I get it. But there's an element to me of like, girl, you are in front of these people. You should be somewhat prepared for these things. And it's a couple things that the show has done repeatedly with Rhaenyra, like with last episode where she's like kind of like giddy to like go and they take King's Landing and trusting Alicent. And there's a sense of like, I don't know, in the way that it's written, like Emma's performing it great, but there's a sense in this way of this written of like, oh, she's still a little like giddy girl. And I'm like, I feel like to some degree, she would have been trained to be like, I've been around beheadings before. I kind of like, I maybe haven't had to dole it out, and I'm sure I have complicated feelings about it, but it's just a little like showing a little bit too much emotion in front of people that I feel like someone like Rhaenyra, as a person who's been in courts, would have a little bit more stoicism. And I think they're trying to do that to like show her complicated feelings, but it sometimes runs a little bit into me being like, it comes across a little like, oh, we still need to have like, oh, the weak and feeble body of a woman mentality of like the woman's real battle is on the birth bed like thing from season 1 that comes up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think what was coming to mind for me is this idea that that it is weak to show emotion. That like,
yes,
if you are crying, the words you are saying don't matter.
Yeah, and to be clear, like I want to be clear on my point is like I think that is part of sexism, is like we judge women for showing any emotion at any point. I'm curious to like see it, I don't know, there's just something in the writing of it that feels an interesting choice, I guess, to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it feels like it's part of the piece of this of, right. It's one more time that the public, or that gathered lords and ladies and workers of the court, are witnessing her. The fail sounds like a strong word, but yeah, in a way, like not meet the moment in the way that might be necessary to convince them that, yes, you are the best ruler. We're fully on your team. It's like another way of sowing doubt into some people's minds that, like, oh, she couldn't actually pull this off. Oh, she was actually like showing hesitancy while even walking up the steps. Like,
I think that's part of what it is to me, is like, for example, like I remember I have complicated feelings about this figure in politics, but I remember like Hillary Clinton, when she was like running for president, like there's so much crazy, like she's showing emotion. I'm like, she's showing the same emotion of like any other, male politician, but she gets judged for it more as a woman. Again, I have complicated feelings of Hillary Clinton, but like that was a sexist criticism of her. And I feel like that's a thing that Rhaenyra, the character, would be somewhat aware of. And so in this scene where it's like she is showing like in front of people a little bit more emotion than she should, and obviously again, a lot of crazy stuff happening right now and emotions she's having for sure. So I get that, but I feel like there should have been a slightly more guardedness from her in portraying that publicly, like an awareness of that, because I feel like she's done that in front of her lords and in front of like now the public here, and it's like I feel like she would be a little bit more self-cognizant as a character of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I maybe like it's like just that this is the in-universe version of going mad, or whatever someone wants to categorize it as. Like again, the historians in Fire and Blood will say like she was never the same after that and lost all of her nerve or whatever, and it's like, oh, this is like a subtle version of what that actually looked like, how that actually played out in front of everybody. But true, like again, Olivia Cooke and Emma Darcy squaring off with their faces was so good, because
that ending was phenomenal.
You're like watching Alicent be in shock that like of course that like she didn't actually manage to escape, but like even then I'm sure that she was brought into that room and she had in her mind like, look, our deal was that me and my daughter and granddaughter get to live. Like she was probably trusting that Rhaenyra would hold up that side of the deal, and again not expecting that her dad was even in the castle, let alone on Rhaenyra's like kill radar at this exact moment, and then coming in to see that and clearly feeling like all of this work and sacrifice that she just did on behalf of Rhaenyra was like thrown back in her face, basically. And for Rhaenyra to effectively have like the worst nightmare scenario of being like, I didn't want to do this, but I can't say that I didn't want to do this in front of all these people. I have to sit here and look strong. But you can like almost see her trying to like explain with her eyes to Alicent, like, I'm sorry, it's not what it looks like, but it is what it looks like. And like,
don't hate me, isn't it?
It was masterful.
Yeah. Well, that does bring us to the end of the episode. Kim, do you have any final thoughts or anything that you wanted to catch that we didn't talk about? Anything like that?
Last thing on this final moment is that I was getting such flashbacks to Robb Stark.
Oh, yeah.
Attempting to behead Lord Karstark. And just the tragedy around that moment. And like this feeling that it like meant something to the universe that he couldn't execute that man with a single blow. And that same thing felt like it was happening here, where it was like somehow the universe is undermining Rhaenyra's rightful claim to the throne that I'm so defensive and protective of. So I'm like, no, don't give me omens.
Well, that does bring us to the end of the episode. We both really loved it overall. So With that said, just really quickly, don't forget to be on the lookout for that bonus episode that's going to come later this week, where we'll go into all of our thoughts on how this episode compares to the book. And if you want to send us feedback or have any thoughts that you'd like us to consider reading on the show, as I said before, please email at us at acastofkings@gmail.com. I do want to quick just shout out that we got a really amazing email from Rhenerya Halfpenny, hopefully I said your name correctly, who sent in this really good essay on disability as it appears in the Game of Thrones universe. It was sadly a little bit too long to share here. Like there were literally like citations and such in that email, but it was really good.
It was amazing. Thank you for shouting that out because I really loved reading that last week. So
yeah, thank you for sending that in. Sadly we couldn't read on the show, but it is very good. With that said, don't forget you can watch video versions of the podcast at youtube.com at Decoding TV. And even more importantly, if you want to support the show and other shows on the Decoding TV network, please consider becoming a paid subscriber at decodingtv.com, where you can get ad-free episodes of this and other Decoding TV podcasts. But thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you next week for Season 3, Episode 3 of House of the Dragon.